The story of ancient Rome. Ancient Rome, like many other civilizations, had a rise, a peak, and a fall. Its story of how it began, however, is quite different than any other. The story of how Rome came to be starts with twin brothers by the names of Romulus and Remus. They were supposedly the children of a woman who was forced into priesthood and the Roman god of war by the name of Mars. As the story goes, the children were sentenced to death as babies, and so a servant was assigned to carry out the conviction. The servant, however, took pity on them and gently placed the basket that they were in into a river, where that river's god granted them safe passage. The river's god granted them safe passage to the she-wolf goddess named Lupa. Lupa cared for them until a shepherd found them. One day, Remus was captured by the very king that had sent them to death. Romulus had gathered people together to save his younger brother. In that process, Romulus killed the king, and the king's people had offered the throne, and he refused. He and his brother Remus had decided to start their own city. They had agreed to start the city, but not where, and that is where the issues began. Remus began making fun of his brother, and Romulus eventually lost his temper. In his raging state, he had murdered his brother, and so the city was built where he wanted it to be built. Even though the city had a bloody beginning, its rulers proved to be fair and kind, until King Lucius Tarquinius Superbus came along, where his cruel ways led to a rebellion and his eventual overthrow, where the Roman Republic was then formed. In fear of another cruel king, the Roman Republic divided up the power of king into two positions called magistrates. These positions are quite like our President of the United States, with similar jobs and responsibilities. During the Roman Republic, 3 wars took place. These wars were between the Roman Republic and the African city-state by the name of Carthage. These wars were called the Punic Wars. These took place due to Rome's wanting to expand and take over certain territories that were under the control of Carthage. In the end, Rome had won the last Punic War, where they had laid waste to the city-state of Carthage and took all of its territory, and so becoming the most powerful city-state in the Mediterranean Sea. Eventually, the Roman Republic began to fail, and a triumvirate formed. The triumvirate was made up of 3 people. Julius Caesar was the youngest, Pompey, and Licinius Crassus. All 3 of these had successful military expeditions. Eventually, however, when Crassus died, war had erupted between Caesar and Pompey of who should rule Rome. Caesar had eventually come out on top and became Rome's dictator. Less than a year into his reign, however, he was murdered, and another civil war erupted and another triumvirate was formed. After the war was won, the triumvirate fought each other over control of Rome, and Octavian came to be emperor, and so beginning the last phase of ancient Rome. Even though the Roman Empire was the last phase of Rome, the beginning of the empire was one to remember. Corruption had ceased, and issues were being resolved. There were multiple military victories, and Roman culture flourished. That all had to end, though, and so began the fall of Rome. Eventually, the territory that Rome had acquired became too much, and so it was split into 2, the West Rome and the East. The West fell long before the East, due to its having to deal with the Germanic tribes, but the West fell centuries after, and so ending the Roman Empire.